Flashy girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
Miss Fine.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Oh, Mr. Sheffield, the podcast about The Nanny, a hit sitcom from the 90s starring Fran Drescher. I am Sean DiPasquale, here with
Gloria Sheffield.
And we are here to talk about Season 5, Episode 4, Fransom. This is the one where Chester the dog gets kidnapped, and then things escalate into a full-on kidnapping situation in one of the most insane ways. This was the first one where I went, oh, maybe this is what people are talking about when they're like, things really go off the rails in those last two seasons.
Well, here's the thing, though. Fransom, it's clearly a direct play, and that episode is a direct parody of the movie Ransom,
yes,
which was hugely successful. I think it was a 97 movie. Maybe it was 96, but I think it was I think it was this year. I have to double check. Actually, maybe it was 96. One sec.
Oh my
I should have done this before.
We'll never know.
But the thing is, I remember seeing this movie, and I mean, I don't know.
Movie.
Yeah. It was kind of like a sensation at the time, and the premise is very similar, except instead of a dog, it was a son. And basically, Mel Gibson plays this like wealthy father. Rene Russo was the wife, and the son gets kidnapped, and it was like gritty and kind of like, I remember like being really affected by the kid in the kidnap situation. And the thing that was so bold is, just like in this episode, instead of paying the ransom to get his son back, Mel Gibson does this like really sort of, in some ways, insane move and turns it into a bounty on the kidnapper's head. And so that, that's where the whole plot of this episode comes from, in a way that we have not seen this show do before.
Yeah, so look, I definitely went into it being well aware that this is all a big parody, and I think that was what kind of took me out of it too, is because that was why I was like, oh, maybe this is what people refer to when they go like, oh, that show got weird in the last couple of seasons, because it's not really that kind of show, right? We haven't really seen them do straight up parody episodes based on whatever pop culture thing is gripping the nation at the moment. So it does feel a little weird to me. And yeah, I mean, it was funny though. It was very funny. Has a great cast.
I kind of loved it.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah. I kind of loved it in the way that I love 30 Rock stuff, because I'm like, what other show is doing this, Sure. But yeah, so we start the episode off fairly normally. We establish the continuity that Yetta is getting married, because in the last episode, or a couple of, in episode 1 of this season, she got engaged. And so basically Niles comes into the kitchen, and Fran's sitting there drinking coffee, and he's like, ooh, I got Yetta a gift for her shower, and it's a large print Kama Sutra. And Fran complains that oh, she doesn't know what she's going to get Yetta for the shower because she's just always broke. And there's this funny gag where she's like, I don't know where all my money goes. And then she's like, watch out, my Gucci bag. And
then also is wearing designer clothing.
Yes. And then Cece comes in with Chester, and this was a really funny beat. She goes, Nanny Fine, have you seen the latest issue of Park Place magazine? And she holds it up right next to her face, and we see that she is on the cover with Chester. And it's clearly this fancy sort of local Manhattan magazine, like a who's who type of thing. And Fran, who doesn't look up from her reading at that point, goes, what's the point? It's always just some horsey-faced debutante clutching her blue blood fiance. And then she looks up and she goes, oh, it's you and Chester. And this,
by the way, Chester's the best actor on this show. That dog is so good.
He bites Cece on command and licks Fran on command. It's so perfect.
And he sleeps when he has to. He just sleeps like such a good little boy.
And he's always in a sweater.
I also think it's really, before we get too far away from it, I think it's actually really hilarious that they're still following the Yetta getting married storyline. It's been an ongoing D plot for a good like season and a half.
No. She got engaged in the first episode of this season.
Yeah, but she was dating that guy in the previous season. There was a joke about the guy that she was dating, and now they're engaged. It's all very funny to me that like Yetta's love story has played out in the background.
And well, then in this scene in the kitchen, Cece casually mentions that her maid Lupe has died, and she now needs a dog walker. And it's sort of like, oh, bam, that's how Fran gets an extra job walking Chester for $10 an hour. And we literally just established that she was in need of extra money.
Yes.
And so the next scene.
Also, she only gets paid $5 an hour.
Well, we know she gets paid $6, so I think she was just sort of exaggerating because she was like, walk your dog for $10 an hour. Do you know how much I get paid to watch children? Half that. And then she goes, give me the dog. And then the next scene has all three fine women in the mansion's living room squabbling over the shower. And so, because Fran and Sylvia are discussing it. And then Yetta comes in and she goes, all right, here's my ideas for the shower. And then Sylvia goes, oh, look who's planning a round shower. Yesterday you wore your underpants as a beret, which killed me. Killed me. Basically insinuating like you don't have the capacity to help us. And then Yetta goes, hey, I don't have to take this from you. I'm not even sure you're mine. Which I just really love this. And then there's this little side thing that happens, which seemingly is inconsequential now, but will be very important later. I said later.
Later. You said it like Fran. It'll be very important later.
And it's
Pay attention.
Pay attention. It'll be on the exam later. But so Yetta gives Fran some chocolate X-Lax as a gift because she got extra in her purse from something she won at bingo. So Fran,
I really appreciated the foreshadowing, and like I really liked this. I when it pays off later, I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like, I thought that was a throwaway joke because it worked great because it's a very funny joke in the moment, and it totally works, and then you completely forget about it, and it's amazing that it paid off.
Absolutely. And it was sort of subtle too. You weren't like, oh, that was shoehorned in.
No.
And so then Cece comes out and hands Chester to Fran and is basically, he just ate. He needs to go number 2. So we then cut to Fran and Gracie in Central Park in some exterior shots. And at first, Gracie's like, oh, Fran, this is going to be a great place for you to meet guys. And she's like, oh, I'm not on the market. Your father and I are sort of an item now. But then Gracie goes, yeah, and that pony he promised me? Glue. And so then Fran's like, oh, okay. So she basically freshens up her makeup and sort of is like, okay, let me at least see if there's any eligible men here. And this guy, oh my God, I forgot to put down his name, but he is a recognizable actor, not a household name actor.
Joey Slotnick is his name, and he's been in a bajillion things, and you wouldn't know any of his characters if I've named them, but he's on enough shows that I feel like everyone has seen him as something at some point or another.
And he looks like he's either Paul Giamatti or, as comes into play later, Art Garfunkel.
Yes, he does. He looks like their child.
Yes. And so, but this guy comes up to Fran and is like, ooh, such a beautiful woman. And he says to Gracie, you're such a lucky girl to have such a beautiful older sister, that whole kind of thing. And then they get into conversation, and while they're chatting, he kind of implies oh, his dog loves to run around the park off leash, and kind of gives the idea to Fran. So Fran's like, oh, Chester would probably like that. So takes him off the leash and he goes running. And then as they're chatting, Gracie kind of goes Fran, where's Chester? And then they realize he's completely disappeared. Literally, I think actually this is similar to Ransom. I vividly remember this since that movie is weirdly seared into my brain the way that sometimes movies are when you watch them when you're young. The only thing that Mel Gibson finds is the toy plane he had just given his boy.
Yes.
And so
it's the same setup. He takes him to the park. he runs off to play. Mel Gibson looks away for like 2 seconds, which was the greatest fear of everybody growing up in the 80s and 90s, is that you'd look away from your child for 2 seconds and they would get horrendously kidnapped. And so this movie definitely played on those very common fears. And then, he finds the kid's toy on the ground, and it's very dramatic. And this show basically, they nailed some of the shots and stuff. Like, they were definitely playing up the ransom of it all.
And
so yes, he's been dog napped.
He's been dog napped, and Fran and Gracie like hold each other crying, and then Fran goes, "Oh, Gracie, you lost Chester," which was just zero accountability. Very funny. And then we cut to Fran sobbing in the mansion living room, and everyone's sort of there worried. And Val comes in, and she's like, "I called the police. And Jeff's on his way over." And Mr. Shelby's like, "Who's Jeff?" And Val's like, "It's Fran's ex, the one with hand." Oh no, Niles is like, "Fran's ex, owns his own handcuffs, a younger version of you." And I think we did actually. I think this was the same actor who played her cop boyfriend for a little while. It was. Which I do enjoy bringing him back. Like, I'm like, I love it when they kind of have continuity like that.
Me too. I really appreciate it.
Yes. And Cece's just been killing me lately, because so then Cece walks in and Fran is distraught because she's like, "I'm going to have to break this to Cece, and this is terrible news." And she basically tells her that Chester was stolen, and Cece does not care at all. She's just relieved that it's not something she actually cares about. And then Jeff arrives, and this has been, I know you thought this was all very silly. I thought this was just fun to me, because I do.
It was very. I liked this scene though. I thought it was really funny. I liked them coming in and his partner immediately being like, "I'm gonna wiretap the phone." I was like, for a dog, and then they do explain it away by being like, "Oh, there's dogs that have been gone missing, and we're worried about the dogs have gone missing, and people have been kidnapping them in this area. So we're, and then they call with a ransom. So we're just, trying to get ahead of it." But it was all very funny. And
to be fair, I think that there is some reality to this, because it is the dogs of wealthy people who are getting, so wealthy people are getting targeted. If this happened on the Upper East Side in Manhattan, I bet you the police would get involved and start wiretapping. And then, I
don't think they'd wiretap for a dog.
Even if it was like, a family who donated a lot to the police force.
Because the dog's not a person. That's to me, I was talking to Elizabeth about it when we were watching this episode. Because whatever, spoilers. But towards the end of the episode, when he ends up kidnapping Fran and Val, I turned to Elizabeth and I'm like, "But didn't he make him isn't he in such worse legal jeopardy now?" Because before he was just it was property, right? A dog's not a person, so they would just consider that property. It's not. Now he's got he's kidnapped, and Elizabeth was like, "Yeah, at this point now it's kidnapping, false imprisonment, assault." It's so much worse.
Well, regardless,
it's very, very funny.
Jeff comes in, and Detective Jeff, and they wiretap the house, and the phone rings, and it is in fact the guy who was chatting Fran up earlier. He was confirmed to be sort of he was a distraction so that someone could nab the dog while she was distracted. And basically he's on the other end of the line in his apartment somewhere else in New York City with his Russian girlfriend. They have Chester, and he's basically like, "If you don't pay 20, he was like, "We know that Cece Babcock's dog. We saw him on the cover of Park Place magazine. And if she doesn't pay $20,000, we're going to send that dog to her in pieces." And then Fran hears this, and she's distraught, and she tells Cece, and Cece just goes, "I'm going to tell you what I told my elderly uncle who needed money for an operation. Nobody squeezes a dime out of Cece Babcock." And then
was so funny.
They're also, I have to say this though, I forgot, I blew past it. When Jeff, the detective, walks in and, it's like, "Okay, we're going to set up a wiretap in the house. And, we think that this is a pattern among wealthy people in Manhattan." And then he goes, "And, we believe the perps are a husband and wife team." Fran just goes, my perp's not single. like that was the note that struck a chord for her. It's like even my perp is married.
Yep,
And
exactly.
so, but then yes, Cece's like, you're not going to squeeze a dime out of me. And we cut to Cece on television. And now this is a direct lift from Mel Gibson in Ransom. Because she's like, I have the $20,000, but I'm not giving them to the kidnapper. I'm giving them to the person who catches the kidnapper and turns them in.
Yeah. He offers a bounty. I mean, well, Cece in this case offers instead of a $20,000 ransom, she turns that into a $20,000 bounty on the dog napper's head, which is funny in and of itself. All for a dog.
Yes.
But $20,000 is $20,000. So it's like, oh, I mean, yeah, sure. People would want that. Like,
oh, for sure. And I, and the thing, I guess maybe it's like hard to understand if you haven't seen Ransom in context, but Mel Gibson's character doesn't do it because he like doesn't want his kid back. He just thinks that this is secretly going to be like a more effective way. Cause he's like, this somebody must know who this kidnapper is. And like somebody is going to be motivated by money enough. So like, it was sort of like trying to get his son back, but also reaping justice at the same time, which was a very, bold, again, I say it was bold because everyone else around him was like, you're crazy. Your son is now as good as dead. And so, but that's what Cece's doing. And then Fran gets an idea and she pulls Val aside and she's like, we're going to find the kidnappers and we're going to get the prize money. And she's like, you know what, Val? When I was on the phone with that kidnapper, I heard an ice cream truck in the background and it was playing Barbra Streisand's The Way We Were, or Memories rather. And she was like, we're in New York.
No, it was The Way We Were. Yeah.
Oh, The Way We Were. And yeah, because isn't it Memories from The Way We Were?
Yes.
But
the song is called The Way We Were.
It's not Memories?
No, you're thinking of Memory from Cats.
Memories. No, I'm not. Like the corner.
Yeah, but the song is called The Way We Were. Yeah, you got the right song. All right.
No, Memories. Barbra Streisand. Okay, we're gonna settle this once and for all. Yeah, I'm right. It's called Memory.
Well.
Yeah, you fucking idiot. I'm salty today because I just woke up from a nap.
Because it's from the movie The Way We Were.
Yes, but the song is called Memory.
Okay, if you say so.
Hey, I dare you to find counter evidence to that. She's like, it was playing Barbra Streisand Memories, and she's like, where is the only place in New York City that plays Barbra Streisand in an ice cream truck? And then they both go, Greenwich Village.
Yes.
Which is, a famously happening gay neighborhood. And then Val goes, so if I help you with this, we'll split the money.
It's the West Hollywood of New York.
Mm-hmm. And I would say way cooler and with way more history.
Oh, yeah. A billion times more.
And, so Val's like, so if I help you, we're going to split the prize money 50-50, right? And Fran goes, 60-40. And she's like, why 60-40? And Fran goes, well, I'm the one that lost the dog, Val.
This is
funny.
I loved it. That was one of my favorite lines and moments because I thought that was so good. And her exasperation with Val in that moment, because I'm the one who lost him, Val. She's so defensive.
And Val kind of has like, oh, right, of course. And that was so funny. I told Monica about that line later that day. And so we cut to Greenwich Village and Fran and Val are driving an ice cream truck, which we find out they bartered from Mr. Softy. And Fran just had to promise she'd go on a date with him.
Yep.
Which just killed me. And we then cut to the kidnappers in their apartment. And the guy is like freaking out and he's like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Like there's now a $20,000 bounty on my head. And at first the Russian girlfriend seems like way too interested. Like, oh, $20,000 you say. But then in their like, random panic conversation, she ends up asking for ice cream. Seems random, but they have to get this guy to the ice cream truck somehow.
Yes, so they have to get him outside to the ice cream truck. Yeah. And they also have to establish that like this woman is clearly just using him for money and he's like a glutton for punishment. So like she's like, they set up the whole like, oh baby, and she like shows her shoulder to him, and she's like, I am so hot, please give me ice cream, and he's like, okay, like,
Yeah.
and he like runs outside to go get her ice cream because like, he's like, oh, I'm horny, and then
And this is so funny.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
And then he like, it is so funny. They like, Val serves him ice cream and can't figure out how much he owes her, even though she's like, it's $1 an ice cream. And he's like, I'll take 2 ice creams. And she's like, how much would that be?
Yeah.
And like Fran realizes who he is as he's like walking away. And she's like, that's him. Like, we got to follow him like to his apartment. And I really liked this. Like they get inside and then
wait, hold on. I thought you were gonna say. I thought you were just about to say one of my favorite lines, which is then when Fran's like, "Oh my God, Val, that was the guy." Val goes, "Oh my God, Art Garfunkel has to steal a dog."
That's right.
But sorry, go on.
Yeah, so then they get inside, they follow him in, and they get inside, and they're in the hallway, and you hear Chester barking, and then Fran's like moving closer to the door, and Val goes, how do you know what apartment he's in? And then you hear like, bark, 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 bark. And then Val goes, ugh, I can't even think with all that dog barking. Yeah, I love her so much. I love Val so much. Oh, I love her. And then they get caught basically. Like,
yes, like they're trying to peer in the window right as the Russian woman opens the apartment door and sees them. And then we cut back to the mansion and the ransomer calls again. And this time he's like, you were willing to risk your dog's life, but what if I told you I had Fran? Fine. And we now see that Fran, Val, and Chester are all tied up together in the kidnapper's apartment. It's so funny because it's like their hands are tied and Chester's paws are tied in front of him.
It's really cute.
I was like, is that like a stuffed animal that looks like Chester? Because he was so well behaved, but I think it really was.
I was Chester. That's where I was like, I turned to Elizabeth and I went, he is really a good dog. Look at him. He's so cute. He just like like he licks her face. It's cute. In the beginning, when Cece's holding him, he just like his little head cranes over to try to like get closer to Fran because he clearly is like, mom, we're here. Look at me. And then when Fran holds him, he doesn't move and he's just like his jaw hangs open and he smiles like with his tongue out and he's just like, yeah, my mom loves me. And then like in other scenes, he just like sleeps very quietly on her lap. It's so cute. Love that dog.
Yeah. And when Lauren Lane was on Fran Drescher's talk show, she basically was like, oh yeah, like the dog, like that was real. Like he would nip if you tried to take him away from her and only wanted to be with her. And it almost sounded like he was actually kind of a terror to work with, but nobody could say it because it was the boss's dog.
Yeah, he's a good boy. He loved his boss. Listen, dogs are not meant to be actors. So he was doing his best job as a dog, which was being like a loving dog to his owner and truly man's best friend. I love him.
So now the ransomers have Fran and Val in addition to the Chester, and they are now asking Mr. Sheffield for $40,000. And the ransomer is basically like, okay, this is what you have to do. He's like,
which is really messed up because it means that Fran is clearly only worth as much as a dog is worth to this kidnapper. Like he just asked for another $20,000.
Well, so like Val
and Val's worth nothing. Yeah, exactly. Val is worthless. Or alternatively, Fran and Val are individually worth less than a dog to this guy. It's bad no matter what way you slice it. It's very sad.
But so he tells Mr. Sheffield, like, he's like, okay, put 40 grand in a bag and drop it off at the neighborhood bowling alley. And he starts listing all the things that Mr. Sheffield's going to have to do in order to like eventually make the drop and get Fran back. And we then cut to Mr. Sheffield doing all of this over the narration to the song Secret Agent Man. And I thought this was very funny, and because Charles Shaughnessy got the opportunity to do some very funny physical bits here, because it's a lot of like, you know, like sneaking around in the bowling alley, trying to get under a chair. And a woman like clearly thinks she's, you know, he's trying to cop a feel. And then when he gets to the pool, he literally has to jump in fully clothed,
great.
which
It's really
actually happened in Ransom, because I rewatched the trailer and Mel Gibson does dive into a pool. Don't remember why. But this was very funny in the context of this show, because once he dives into the pool, the music just cuts dead. And we cut back to the mansion with the detective and also like all of the Sheffield family. And the detective just goes, "We lost him." But he wouldn't have jumped into a pool wearing a tracking device, would he? And all of his kids go, "Oh, yeah, he would." Like, our father's an idiot. And then we cut back to Mr. Sheffield, now soaking wet, but he's in a YMCA locker room, and he like opens the specific locker he was supposed to open, and he answers the phone, and he just goes, I gave you your money. Now give me back my nanny," which is classic from Ransom again, where it's "give me back my son.
Money, now give me back my son." And then he screamed about how much he hates Jewish people and women.
Okay, it is so funny that you just said that, because the very next thing in my notes was, isn't it both sad and funny how many celebrities we now have to preface with, okay, but you listeners, you have to understand this was before they went insane. This is when we loved them. Yeah. And like, we've had to do that for like at least 4 guest stars, which shows you just how many people have gone insane in the last 5 years.
No, what it shows you is that all celebrities are as broken and fucked up as the rest of humanity. And it's insane. The more insane thing is that we as a society bolster anyone up to be anything other than just like the same piece of shit human that we are. You know what I mean? That's the real sad fact, is like, it's like, I mean, yeah, he's a piece of garbage, but like, I don't know. Why did we think he was so great to begin with again? Because he was in movies?
He was a handsome man.
Yeah.
He had beautiful blue eyes.
He did. He does have very beautiful blue eyes
that
are filled with hate.
We've both discussed this, that both are like, for women of a certain age, yes. He was like the Brad Pitt, you know? And then it was tragic for them when he became
Brad Pitt came along. When he became a monster.
Okay.
No.
That too. But right. So then we cut to Mr. Sheffield now like knows where he's supposed to go find Fran. And we go to the ransomer and his wife in the van with Val, Fran, and Chester. And he's basically saying like, okay, to his Russian partner, he's like, you know, you're going to go meet the man with the bag and you'll give him the dog, basically like you're going to go get the money and then we'll give him the dog and blah, blah, blah. And so while this is happening, Fran just kind of goes, does anybody want some chocolate? And she takes the chocolate that is actually laxatives that Yetta gave her and gives it to the kidnapper and the kidnapper's wife. Yeah. And Val goes, I would like some chocolate. And Fran goes,
no, you don't.
She goes, no, you don't. She goes, no, I would. And she goes, no, Val. And Val goes, now suddenly they're your best friends? Who are you, Patty Hearst? And there's also this incredible line when right before the wife is going to go run out to like make the drop with Mr. Sheffield, the guy goes, Mrs. Levine, you're about to be a very wealthy woman. And Fran just looks at Val and goes, Levine? I tell you, Val, when Jews go bad. Which was very funny because, I mean.
Very funny. No, it is. I mean, I guess if you didn't grow up Jewish, you don't know this, but like there is this weird, like, unspoken agreement amongst all of us that like Jews don't do bad things. And like everyone seems to have the same reaction when you find out that someone who did something terrible was Jewish. It's always like, oh, he was Jewish? It's so funny. Like we're so like, oh no, we have to claim him. Very funny. So that line also to me struck very close. I was like, oh, I love that. That's great. When Jews go bad.
And then, of course, they basically like the woman, instead of going to grab the bag from Mr. Sheffield, ends up running right past him into the fastest porta potty. And
Yes.
as they're watching from the van, the guy is like, what is she doing? Why did she do that? And then he's like, actually, I gotta go take care of something. And he like hops out of the van and runs away. And Val's like, what just happened? And Fran's like, when you gotta go, you gotta go. And then Mr. Sheffield sees them and pops in. And because of Fran's plan with the laxatives, not only were they rescued, but they didn't have to lose any money. all because of a poop your pants joke.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But it was funny though, because Mr. Sheffield jumps in and they embrace and he unties her, and she's like, oh, Mr. Sheffield, you're my hero. And then she's like, in my culture, when a man saves a woman's life, they get married right away and get a house together in Great Neck. And he's like, good thing I'm not Jewish, or he says something like that. And then she goes, want some chocolate? And I just thought that was so cruel. The man just saved your life, and now you're going to make him shit his pants.
So cool.
It
was so mean. It's like, because he clearly cares about her. I mean, obviously he cares so much about her that he did all of this to try to save her life. And I get it. She's frustrated, but it just seemed really cruel to be like, good, go shit your brains out for 2 days.
Also, it's like, this is definitely the Fran that replaced hairspray with Pam, and didn't she also put X-Lax in someone's hot chocolate as a child?
Yes, they use the X-Lax joke a lot.
Yep. And then there was a really cute little button at the end of this episode, which is Niles comes into the living room where Yetta is hanging out, and he's like, oh, I'm on my way to the store, Yetta. Do you need anything last minute for your shower? And she goes, yes, those little rubber daisies and a detachable shower head. They're fun. And then he kind of looks at her and he goes, I meant for your wedding shower. And he goes, and yes, they are. And then high fives her. And I'm like, does that mean that Niles uses that on ladies, or does he use it on his butt?
Yeah, I thought the exact same thing. I wasn't going to bring it up, but I had the exact same. I was like, wait, what's the joke though?
I don't know. I mean, hey, maybe that's too blue for our listeners. We'll have to cut
maybe.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, that was an episode.
That was an episode.
And I think it's time for segments. And now, segments.
Segments.
Yeah, no, I think we should move on to segments.
We can move on to our segments.
And now, segments.
With Sean and Toria.
All right. Let's get into segments. Favorite lines and moments?
I already said this, when Sylvia and Yetta are arguing, and Sylvia goes, look who's planning her own shower. Yesterday you wore your underpants as a beret. And Yetta goes, I don't have to take this from you. I don't even know if you're mine. I don't know why it killed me. I loved the oh my god, Art Garfunkel has to steal a dog. And I again already said all my favorite lines, but just the why 60-40? Well, I'm the one who lost him, Val.
I also liked I think it's Fran says to Sylvia, have you met Yetta's fiance yet? And Sylvia goes, what's to meet? He's one of the altacockers at the home. Which is it's so dismissive. She doesn't give a shit.
It's so, what's to meet?
Oh, it's so funny. I said this already too, but how do you know what apartment he's in? And then you hear Chester barking, and then Val goes, ugh, I can't think with all that dog barking.
Yeah.
And we both loved the when Jews go bad line too. We both really liked that as well. Yep.
This episode, I think I liked it because it was full of so many lines that genuinely made me chuckle. Even if it wasn't a emotionally resonant episode in any way. But this is why I say this is to me almost like the spiritual predecessor to a 30 Rock kind of thing, zany. I like it. And then Yiddish. You already just said it, but this was a brand new one. I get so excited when we get a new one. Alter Cocker, which Yetta says, like, what's to meet? He's one of the altar cockers at the home. And an altar cocker is like basically like just like an old senile man, kind of irrelevant. It's not very nice. It's a not nice term for an old man.
For like an old person, basically. Yeah.
And so for nanny trivia, I think I'm actually going to pivot a little just because we were talking about Chester and it jogged my memory. When I read Fran Drescher's book, Cancer Schmancer, maybe about 6 months ago, it was a really good read. It was pretty fast. And one of I guess I'll just like share this anecdote because it is sweet and heartwarming and also like a little sad. As many of our listeners probably know, Fran Drescher is a huge animal lover. She didn't end up having children, and her dogs are like a really, really a big part of her life. And basically after The Nanny, she and Peter Mark Jacobson, like their marriage ended. She had this huge health scare with a cancer diagnosis, and she around this time, like before the diagnoses, but after she and Peter Mark Jacobson broke up, was seeing this guy, and they spent lots and lots of time together. And she sort of describes it as a pretty codependent thing where I think basically as soon as they started dating, he spent like every single night at her home for like the next like year and a half or something like that. And during that time also Chester, who was pretty old, he died. And, I think had been her dog for like 16 years or something like that. And it was just this really kind of like sad, like, but human moment where finally when after her surgery and she was recovering, this guy was like, you know what, like, I think I need to take some space. I'm going to go back to my apartment basically for the night. And she had not spent a night alone in, a year and a half. He left, and she was like, for the first time, like I sort of looked around my home, and at first I couldn't figure out what was wrong. And then I realized Chester wasn't there. And she's like, so much had happened that, in this past crazy year and a half, that like I had kind of been able to focus on other stuff. But, it really did leave, like a big, like a hole there. And they actually did go to Paris together when he was alive. They had an amazing Paris weekend. And so she eventually did adopt another Pomeranian, and she's had, several beloved dogs since then. But, he was a big part of her life and her heart. So, hey, little shout out to Chester, R.I.P.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah. But I think he had a great life. Yeah,
it sounds like he had a lovely life. And when, it sounds like she was like not, like it's always sad, but like she understood that, dogs they only got so long, man. That's why they're so awesome.
I don't. You didn't even like dogs. Where is this coming from?
I don't want to own one. I don't want the responsibility, but I can still respect them as animals. I'm not a monster.
For some reason, I just thought you were dog neutral.
Yeah, I think they're cool. I mean, I'm not. I mean, I'm dog neutral on wanting to own one, but like they're cool. They're like adorable little pups. It's like hating a baby.
What if I just flat out refuse to believe you? And I just go like, okay.
What if you gaslit me into thinking I hate dogs?
Well, okay. I feel like you're on the record on this podcast being like, they don't really do anything to me. But to be fair, we've been doing this podcast for 2 years. You might have just been in a different mood that day.
It's true. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I guess that's possible.
But and then for the Fran or the Cece, I said I felt like the Fran in that I always wonder where my money goes, and then I'm like, oh, here's my fourth $5 coffee of the day. Like I'm like, why don't I have any money?
I mean. Yeah, I mean that feels very similar to me. I mean, I don't buy like clothes and purses and stuff, but I'll definitely like, we'll like eat out a bunch and then go do something fun, and then we'll both be like, oh, where'd our money go?
Yeah. So I literally in my email there was this, I got this email like literally yesterday, and it was like, your order is on the way. And I was like, what the fuck? And then I clicked it and I was like, oh yeah, I did order that. Like, why did I order that? Like, I need to like recognize the company.
Like you fall into a fugue state.
Yeah, it was like some, volumizing hair mousse. Clearly saw it in an Instagram ad. It was
my God.
And forgot about it instantly. The thing I had to have, which I instantly forgot was even a thing. But okay, that's an episode, season 5, episode 4. We're on Oh Mr. Chef Pod. Rate and we haven't really asked in a while. Please rate and review us. It helps so much, and we love hearing from you. And it gets the word out to more nanny stands, and that's really finished out the last couple seasons strong.
Yeah. And as always, don't forget, we still have an email address. It's omrsheffieldpodcast@gmail.com. And on that note, I bid you goodbye.
Goodbye.
The Flushing girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
Miss Fine.